Welcome to the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Most people plan for 2026 the same way they plan a vacation. Big ideas, no map. They talk about all the things they want to do, but never build a structure that makes those things inevitable. I've done that before too. Years ago, I had goals that lived in notebooks instead of my calendar. They were exciting, but they never materialized. Then I learned to systematize to make success something that didn't depend on motivation, but on process. Dan Martell calls this making your goals inevitable. And today, Ben and I are going to break down exactly how to do that so 2026 isn't left to chance, but built by design. Let's go ahead and get into it. Before we do, Ben, welcome back to the show. What is going on?
What is going on, my brother? The Pursuit of Progress podcast. Hey, you know what? We're approaching our 100th episode. What is that statistic? Most podcasts don't make it past like 3 or 4.
I think there's like 90% of podcasts don't make it more than like 3 episodes. Yeah.
Well, we got episode 100 coming up, so stay tuned.
Yeah, super excited. We're going to have that one hopefully out right at the end of the year, or it might be like the first week of January, which is kind of cool to kind of kick off season 3 on a fresh new year. But yeah, more to come on that, you guys, in a couple weeks. But Ben, love just to kind of get your take on this. We've talked about some of these points and principles on past episodes, but I know you're really big on goal setting and making every year better than the last. We were also talking about that earlier today. So like, what can we do to make 2026 inevitable? You know, the strategy today. So the strategy behind or before the strategy.
I got an opportunity earlier this year to do some coaching with Dan Martell, and you're probably familiar with him. He's blowing up right now all over YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. But the reason I signed up for his coaching is because his content. I was just so attracted to what he was sharing online and in his videos and in his reels. And one of the things that he talked about was the inevitable framework. And so what he teaches is that winners don't rely on willpower. They design environments and systems that make success unavoidable. And here's how you do it. There's a 4-step process that he outlines. So step 1, decide what your 1-year North Star is. It's going to be the single goal that defines what winning looks like this next year. After you've done that, move on to step 2, which is you then break it down by quarters. What needs to happen every 3 months to stay on track? After you've done that, move on to step 3, where you can break up each quarter into monthly milestones. And then you're going to reverse engineer those milestones into weekly and daily actions. Because the truth is, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the strength of your systems. James Clear quote right there. When you have structure, momentum stops depending on motivation. That is how you make your goals inevitable. And when you do it, this is one thing that I shared with my daughter, because he has just an amazing goal setting course. For those that have signed up for his coaching. It was so powerful. I made her watch the hour-long course. It's the best by far goal-setting course I've ever seen. And he breaks it down. The entire, most people just they make that goal and then that's it. But when you follow this process and you do it like this, and you got to also reward yourself along the way when you hit those milestones, you make that a destination. The journey becomes part of the accomplishment, but then you're not asking, am I going to hit this or do this? You're asking, when? Is this going to take 6 months, 9 months, or a year?
And unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunately for some of us that choose to kind of pursue goals and achieve more in life, a lot of times you're not even going to be able to see that progress in a short term. So maybe a day, maybe even a week in some cases, you're not going to be able to tell if you've lost that 1.5 or 2 pounds. But doing that consistently over time, all of a sudden after a month, you've lost 10 pounds and it's noticeable. So I think if you don't break it down from 1 year down to quarters, down to months, and then down into daily and weekly actions, you're going to have these days where you don't have the reasoning, the accountability, the point behind why you're still needing to do things on a daily basis. You'll just start falling into I'll do it tomorrow. And then all of a sudden that tomorrow is going to become next week, which is going to become next month. And then this goal is just going to completely derail. And you're going to be talking about it next December, talking about it as your goal setting for 2027, 2028, or whenever it may be.
All of this, what we're talking about, is doing something for your future self. Your future self is going to thank your present self. Let me share an example with you. This morning, I made my bed like I do every morning, and I don't necessarily want to go through that process. It takes a couple minutes and it's a little bit of a disruption in the morning. But the reason I do that is because my future self, the Ben who is getting ready to go to bed at 9 or 10 at night, really values and places a high value on getting into a bed that's made. One of the things I hate doing is getting into an unmade bed. And so, even though it's something I don't want to do, that delayed gratification, I value that so much later in the evening that it's worth the pain. And that's something that's really helped me with some of my goals is that I think of like my future self. How is this going to impact me 10 years from now? What is the 50-year-old Ben saying? Is this purchase? Is this investment? Is this something that's going to benefit the 60-year-old Ben or the 60-year-old Ben say, let's put our time and energy elsewhere. So learning how important that delayed gratification is and then looking at yourself in those different stages of life, I have found has been really beneficial to me.
That's awesome. Yep, I agree, man. Something that you have to the only way to really value this and understand what we're talking about right here is just from
Mhm.
doing it. Until you've done it for
Yeah.
yourself and kind of realize this aha moment of, "Oh, yeah, the 2 minutes it takes me to make my bed, it is actually a benefit other than just looking a little bit nicer in your room, just having some of these non-negotiables that you're forcing yourself to not make an excuse about anymore and you're doing them regardless of how you feel. Even if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, you're still making your bed. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about these non-negotiables for Q1 of next year. So just in a
Yeah.
few weeks, depending on when you guys are listening to this episode, you're going to be hitting the first of 2026, a new quarter of a century. And I want to zoom in because if you could only accomplish three things within that first quarter of next year, so by March 31st of 2026, you could only accomplish three things, what would they be? That's where you start. Those are your non negotiables. So once you've got those, then you want to start stacking habits to make the execution of this easier. So if you already brew coffee every morning, attach something important to that ritual. Review your power list, visualize your day, maybe send one meaningful message to somebody in your sphere. Ed Milet, another great entrepreneur we both love, he talks a lot about how you're only one disciplined decision away from a completely different life. That decision might be something as small as deciding what happens right after your alarm clock goes off every morning. Your non negotiables, they aren't about doing more necessarily. They're about locking in on what matters the most and then removing decision fatigue before it
Mhm.
hits.
Mhm. Yeah, that's I love that suggestion that you have as far as attaching a morning routine to something that's meaningful. I think for myself, you know, as you were saying that, I was just envisioning me making my morning coffee, and I think during that time, I'm pretty sure I'm always just popping on my phone for like a minute. And I think there's so many instances throughout the day where it's like I'm waiting on this thing or I'm doing this activity, but then I'm just going to pop on my phone here and check in and see what's going on in the social media world and really attaching something meaningful to the activity. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, I think one takeaway that I got years ago, and just to be honest with you guys, I don't do this on a religious basis, a regular basis, but Andy Frisella, who's probably one of my top favorite entrepreneurs, very, very successful business person, he talked about just the importance of visualization and every day in the morning when he brushes his teeth, he's been doing this for years where that just triggers something in his mind where he starts to think about his it's almost like a vision board, but he has it in his head. So maybe a
Mm,
certain trip he wants to go on with his wife, or maybe it's, building out a new aspect of his property or whatever it may be, a new business that he's trying to start next year. Just having a few of these vision board type ideas and just always going to that place whenever you do something mundane and normal on a weekly or daily basis, like brushing your teeth, maybe even just stepping in the shower for 5 or 10 minutes, going to the bathroom. I don't care what it is, but if you're doing these things regularly, it can be a little mindset shift where you start to just automatically go to certain places when you're doing these certain tasks.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, just especially recently, these last couple episodes, having a heightened awareness around some of our activities, our goals, that vision. And I just think of myself making that morning coffee. And what if that was my time to just pour into my side hustle mentally? and craft that vision for 2 minutes, and then kind of sip on that coffee, and just have that big belief. Might only be a couple minutes long, but if I'm doing that every day, it seems like that could be really, really powerful.
Yeah, or even if it's just what you're thankful for, some of your
Yeah,
daily, what's the word I'm looking for? Affirmations.
just yeah, gratitude. That's one of the things that I added this year, that I started doing. We talked about things that you want to stop doing, start doing, and then continue doing, and that's something that I was given that suggestion by a friend of mine or a mentor who I really look up to, and just writing down the act of writing down 4 or 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. I'm not writing an essay. This isn't even journaling. This is literally me just writing down 4 things that I'm thankful for. Sometimes it's a word, oftentimes it's 4 or 5 words, but just the act of having an awareness and that acknowledgement, and then the act of writing down those things that I'm grateful for, I feel very fulfilled and thankful, when I get to do that. It just puts me in a different perspective mentally, emotionally, 'cause same thing. I think that we have so much that we are grateful for, or we should be, but if we don't have that awareness, and if that isn't top of mind, then it's easy to not acknowledge those things.
Definitely.
Let's go ahead and talk about review and realignment. Once your systems are running, you need one ritual to keep them aligned: a weekly reset. So every Sunday, take 30 minutes to review the following. What were my wins for the week? Where did I fall short? And what are my priorities for next week? That's it. This tiny little ritual will help you compound confidence, because each week you're not starting over, you're starting smarter. The weekly reset keeps your system flexible while staying focused. And that's the secret to sustaining progress all year. Again, having those systems set up where at Sunday night at 6 p.m., I'm going to go over this recap. I'm going to realign, stay focused, re-engaged, think about this past week, what went well, where did I fall short, and then think about next week. But again, though, it's getting in the habit of doing that, making sure that time is already built out.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind on this is a good buddy of both of ours, Will Grimes, who I'm involved with some of the real estate stuff that I do. He used to be in the military, and he talks a lot about this, specifically about in the military, you have what's known as an after action report. And he has these after action reports that he does on a weekly basis, similar to this, like on a Sunday evening. And it just kind of sets the entire upcoming week just in motion on Sunday night. So when Monday morning hits, instead of thinking about what you need to do today and how you're going to get going for the day or for the week, you already have this after action report that not only has helped you reflect on what worked and didn't work from the previous week, it also then helps you guide these priorities for your upcoming week. So Sunday evening is a great time to do this, but I will push back and say the best time to do this is whenever you guys can hold yourselves accountable and stay consistent with. So whatever that is, just having a time each week where you reflect on your wins, your losses, and then you set intentionally what you're going to be working on next week to keep steering in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think you have to have that time blocked out on your calendar. You need to know exactly when that is. There can't be any doubt, and it has to be scheduled. And for me, that I found throughout the years, I do so much better with holding myself accountable when it comes to time if I do something in the morning. So I'm
Hmm.
much more likely to get up and go to Starbucks and maybe work on passion projects or do whatever else on a Saturday morning than I would be on a Sunday evening. Got football games, family, kids are going back to school Monday. And so for me, there's a lot more distractions. And so it's really figuring out what time that is for you, and then making that a priority, blocking it out, and then kind of going back to some of our earlier conversations. When you get those questions, can you come? Would other people try and take your time from you or ask you for favors, or do you want to meet up? It gives you an opportunity to say no. I'm putting myself first here because I have this thing, this goal, that's really important to me. I want to be able to reflect and grow into the person that I'm called to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important. Don't make resolutions. You need to be focused more on making inevitabilities. So if you guys want to reverse engineer your 2026 goals into what we're talking about here, a real repeatable plan, I would love the opportunity just to help you guys build it together. No strings attached, just love to help. So book a free 30-minute strategy session. If you go to adamsoulsdenver.com, you can book it there. And we can just work together on identifying what your North Star is, designing out some of these systems, and just how to make your next 90 days unstoppable. So you can either hope, next year might be different, or you make sure it is. And let's focus on that. Let's make sure that 2026 is your best year yet.
It's up to you, but remember, we're all here together. This is a community. We're all doing it. We're all putting the work in. Let's build and let's grow together. Well, thank you for tuning in to our latest episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Remember, systems create success, not wishful thinking. Set your environment, simplify your focus, and make 2026 inevitable. I'm Ben Adams with my co-host Adam Lang, and as always, keep pursuing progress.
That you guys.